Good evening, colleagues. Welcome to the meeting of the Council. Please be seated. I'm required to inform you that this meeting is being recorded. If any member of the public or press would like more information about this, or if they intend to record proceedings themselves, please contact Strategy and Democracy Services, who will be more than happy to advise. Any member who wishes to speak on any of the agenda items should use the microphones provided. May I remind everyone that public questions have to be submitted in writing 8 days before the meeting. The first item of business is declarations of interest. No declarations have been received. Does anyone now wish to verbally make any declarations before we move on to the next business? The next item of business is the minutes of the meeting of the Council of the 13th of June 2019. Are they accepted as a true record? Yes. The next business is Mayor's Communications. I am delighted to announce that this council was named as Cooperative Council of the Year by Cooperatives UK at the Cooperatives Congress held in Manchester in June. I would like to invite Councillor Nancy Maxwell, lead member for voluntary sector partnerships and cooperatives, to tell us about the work that has been led to this prodigious accolade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Widely successful events like the recent summer parade, which involved over 2,000 participants from 39 local groups, show just what can be achieved when local people come together and combine their skills and passions to produce something that we can all benefit from. One of our greatest strengths as a local area is the passion and pride that South Tyneside people have for the local place and community. As such, as a council, we have worked hard to create and promote opportunities which support local people to channel this passion. The hashtag Girls South Tyneside approach and campaign has harnessed social media to promote civic pride, celebrate achievements, and share volunteering opportunities. The third sector's organisations have also been strengthened through initiatives like volunteer support, a community funding portal, external funding forums, and funding fairs. We are seeing tangible benefits to this approach. The proportion council expenditure that goes to local businesses has been increased from 34% in 2010 to 55% last year, meaning a massive boost to the local economy. We have delivered the largest community asset transfer programme in the country, with community groups stepping up to future-proof and expand valued community facilities, including 4 libraries and 12 community associations. External funding to the borough has increased to £5.2 million in the last year, up from £3.7 million in the previous year. Ultimately, as a result of all this amazing work, this year we were delighted to receive the Cooperative Council of the Year award at this year's Cooperative Congress. This accolade is a mark of the achievement of not just the Council, but of all those residents and partners who have been central to these collective efforts. On behalf of all members, officers and partners in South Tyneside, who have worked so hard together to make South Tyneside such a shining example of how cooperation can be such an effective way of working, I would like to present this award to the Mayor.
I am delighted to advise members that 2 council programmes have today been highlighted as best practice by the Chartered Institute of Public Relations. Our fostering campaign, Can You Feel These Shows?, has been shortlisted as one of the best low-budget marketing campaigns which promotes recruitment of foster carers to improve outcome of our children. Our Best Start in Life approach has been also recognised as a top public sector campaign. This campaign communicates information on the whole spectrum of services we provide to children and families, from birth to the time that they become adults. This external recognition is a resounding endorsement of how they communicate with children and families in our communities. The next business is to consider a report of the Corporate Director, Children, Adults and Health, providing an update on children's services. I will ask Councillor Moira Smith to formally move the report. Councillor Smith.
I thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report provides members with an overview on the activity across children's services since our inspection in 2017. The report headlines the achievements we have secured in delivering services for our children and young people, and how we use that inspection as an anchor point for the next phase of our journey to give all children and young people the best start in life. The 2017 inspection raised 7 recommendations which we needed to address via an action plan. There are no recommendations from that inspection that remain unaddressed. The report recognises that last year we experienced an unprecedented increase in demand for social care services, and officers have interrogated performance data to understand the reasons for this. As a result of the inspection outcome, we were successful in applying for partnering practice status. This enables us to support other local authorities who are at risk of failing, whilst also delivering on our own innovation project, The Workplace, which strengthens our offer for children needing care. We are developing our Best Start locality care partnerships, which will bring together early help alongside universal services in 4 localities across the borough. Our new Educare facility, Family Spurs, has been highly effective during its first year of operation and was recognised as being outstanding by Ofsted at its first formal inspection since opening. Whiteley's Way, our in-house children's home, was also judged to be outstanding at its last inspection. Our respite service for children with additional needs, Foxton, was judged to be good at its last inspection. The Regional Adoption Agency, Adopt North East, went live in December 2018, increasing the shared regional footprint for adoption. We received 16 nominations from children and young people this year for our Young People's Choice Award, and we continue to have a dedicated Best Start in Life award. The numbers of children and young people actively involved in participation and engagement work has increased, with more children in care attending the Magic Participation Group that's making a great important change. We have recently introduced a second group to facilitate the increased membership. We want to continue to grow, and some of our priorities to continue to provide excellent services for all children and young people include embedding our new bespoke practice framework across all teams in children's services, further develop our magic groups to respond to increased numbers of young people wishing to engage and participate with officers, strengthen links with services for children with additional needs. I would encourage members to note the positive work we are doing locally to help all children and young people at the best start in life. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Seconded. Are there any questions, or does any member wish to speak to the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a very, very good report, and it's very positive. And long as we go on, moving on in the future, as the young people are the future of the borough. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is the motion agreed? Agreed. The next business is to consider a report of the Acting Corporate Director Economic Regeneration, providing an update on strategic transport. Strategic. I will ask Councillor Mark Wells to formally move the report. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If there's any consolation, I've done the same thing, get a tongue twister on strategic as well. So. This report was presented to members today for information, highlighting some recent successes as well as some future aspirations. Transport has a key role to play in the borough's future, and the package of measures set out in the report will improve our strategic transport network, enabling our people and businesses to travel safely and easily around the borough. Overall, strategic transport schemes will contribute to economic development and regeneration projects, climate change and sustainability targets, improved accessibility by public transport and other modes to jobs and services, congestion relief at critical junctions through network management, and improved road safety. Excellent transport schemes connect our people to places and to essential services. The set of projects outlined in this report will enhance our transport network for the benefit of all local residents. Environmental sustainability is of significant importance when considering major transport interventions, with reducing vehicle idling and improving air quality, key benefits resulting from the Lindisfarne and Arches Junctions improvement schemes. The Council, through a successful Transforming Cities funding bid with our regional partners, is to introduce intelligent traffic signalling to improve traffic flows and bus journey times with anticipated air quality impacts. Further to this, improved sustainable cycle lanes will be provided along the A19 corridor. The investment value is significant, with other funding decisions to be made over the next 6 months or so. The Council's excellent track record for delivering projects on time has helped gain further external funding for such projects. Members are asked to note the report and our continued ambition to create an accessible, reliable and affordable transport network for all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Are there any questions, or does any member wish to speak on the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you obviously to everyone involved in the preparation of that report. There's certainly plenty of things in there that I think deserve applause with regard to the air quality, and obviously it's also mentioned about the track dualling on the metro between Bede and Peel, and that's arguably even more important and more needed rather than road dualling. Obviously, improved capacity and flexibility of public transport is essential, along with improved cycle facilities, as he mentioned, and other forms of active transport for the health of the people in the borough and, of course, the health of the planet. Just one quick question. 6.6.2 in the report mentions about the Arches Junction improvements and mentions that the statistics aren't yet available with regard to journey times and such like. Could you give some indication of when we might expect to be able to see evidence of the impact of that?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. In response to it, it usually takes about a year or so to start getting some indication of results from that, so we should have that in the next 12 months or so.
Is the motion agreed?
Agreed.
The next business is consider a report of Acton Corporate Director Economic Regeneration on flood ablation and South Tyneside. I will ask Councillor Atkinson to form the report. Councillor Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report provides an update to members on the recent work that has been undertaken across the borough to protect residents and businesses from flooding. As lead local flood authority, the Council adopted the Flood and Coastal Risk Strategy 2017, which details its approach to flood and coastal risk management up to 2022. The report provides an update on the following schemes. The award-winning Moncton Flood Alleviation Scheme, which protects over 100 properties from surface water flooding, and we have an award for that here today, which we'll present in a minute or two. The property flood resilience measures are being installed to around 60 residential properties in Moncton, Newcastle Road in South Shields, and Elberfield Court in general. Funding has been secured to contribute to the delivery of the £8.5 million Harton and the New Flood Alleviation Scheme, which will commence in January 2020 in partnership with Northumbrian Water. And the Council is advanced with plans for a multi-million-pound flood alleviation scheme in Clean Village, which is expected to commence mid-2020. Council has recommended to note the contents of this report, which demonstrates our continued commitment to delivering the Council's flood and coastal risk strategy. Mr. Mayor, as mentioned, the Moncton Flood Alleviation Scheme has recently been awarded the National Project Excellence Award 2019 for sustainability by the Environment Agency. And I am delighted to invite Councillor Gibson, who is the Vice Chair of the LGA Coastal Defence Committee, to present the award to you.
Is that seconded? Seconded. Are there any questions, or does any member wish to speak on the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are due to discuss later on tonight a motion with direct implications for flooding and coastal risk. But also in terms of inland flooding, we know that deforestation plays several roles in the flooding equation, because trees prevent sediment runoff, and forests hold and use more water than farms or grasslands. We're aware that there's currently a 2-for-1 planting policy in place regarding the felling of trees in the borough, but of course 2 young trees have a lesser impact arguably than 1 mature tree, and that's if both young saplings survive, which many of them don't. With this in mind, we need to be extra cautious regarding the scale of tree felling currently taking place across the borough, both in terms of air quality, which relates to the previous item on the agenda, and in terms of
Yes, Councillor Francis, thank you. I think we all would agree with what your sentiments on that. What I can say is that 3,000 trees will start to be planted in the forthcoming year or so. We do have currently a coverage of 10% canopy cover for our trees, which is actually very, quite remarkable really, but we do want to head to 12%, so that is our target. But thank you for making that point. Thank you, Councillor Francis.
Thank you. Councillor Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just say that a couple of years ago, I think it was 2012 to 13, when we had that really bad winter, and I think councils up and down the country were sort of caught out by that one. When the snow melted and all the water floods. I think this is a very proactive programme that we've got the Harton and the Moncton scheme, where hundreds of homes will be and properties will be saved, and also in Clean Village, where there is 100 homes which are going to be protected from surface water. Thank you.
The motion agreed?
Agreed.
The next business is to consider a report of the Operations Director on Leisure Services, with record levels of membership and admissions. I will ask Councillor Kern to formally move the report. Councillor Kern.
Thank you. This report
celebrates the performance of the council's leisure facilities, with membership and centre usage reaching unprecedented levels during 2018-2019. Key achievements realised through the reporting year include unprecedented levels of usage with over 1.26 million admissions to leisure facilities. Membership stands at an all-time high with 7,123 members, generating 1.7 million per year. Opening years have been extended across various sites to make facilities more accessible than ever. Access to facilities has been maximised through a range of concessions, with membership prices being reduced according to an individual's employment status, age, and whether they are registered as a carer or have a disability. As part of the Council's commitment to provide young people with the best start in life, leisure services have introduced a unique concessionary scheme called the Magic Offer. The initiative gives children looked after aged 14 to 17 and care leavers up to the age of 25 free access to council leisure facilities. The offer also extends to an accompanying buddy, which includes a family member, carer, or friend. There are 57 young people and 53 registered scheme who between them have benefited from 1,166 free admissions to leisure sites. Mascot members are asked to note not only the record levels of usage at council leisure facilities, but also positive health, social and economic benefits that they provide throughout the borough. Thanks.
Is that seconded? Are there any questions, or does any member wish to speak on the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to extend my thanks to everyone involved in preparing the report, and more importantly to those who work to provide these services and facilities. Clearly, these figures in the report relate to only one measure of participation in exercise, but in this particular set of figures, second to the over 75s, the age group least likely to take up membership is the under 18s, despite free access. I was just wondering, is there more that we could be doing to incentivise this age group to lead healthier and more active lives, especially when we know that childhood obesity is a serious public health concern?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Say again, this was 1.26 million admissions to leisure facilities. So the membership stands at an all-time high with 7,123 members, they're generating 1.7 million. All this has been done, but it's still going on, and things are still getting on. And we'll keep on having that done as much as we possibly can, so that everyone gets what they feel available on. There are 57 young people and 53 buddies registered on the scheme who between them have benefited from 1,166 free admissions to leisure sites. So that's, if you think of that, it's 110, but there was 1,166 free admissions. So it's been very well used, and it's still going up. And we'll keep on doing it that way, and we'll make everything we can. Thank you.
Councillor Kerr, is the motion agreed? The next business is to receive questions under procedure rule 8. No questions have been received under this rule. The next business is to deal with 3 petitions received. I will explain the procedure to follow for the petitions. The appropriate member will present the petition, stating the subject of the petition and the number of signatories. We will not debate the petition today. After the petition has been presented in accordance with the Constitution, I will move that it be referred to the appropriate body. Petition 1 to Save South Tyneside Hospital campaign. It's a written petition. I will ask Councillor McCabe to present the petition. Councillor McCabe.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. As you said, there's no discussion. Mr. Mayor, please accept this petition opposing South Tyneside and Sunderland Council financing in any way the Path to Excellence programme that will downgrade South Tyneside hospital services. This petition has 991 signatures.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe. In accordance with standing orders, I propose that the petition stands referred to the appropriate officer for further consideration. Is that seconded? Seconded. Is that agreed? Agreed. Petition 2. From the Save South Tyneside Hospital campaign, an online petition. I will ask Councillor McCabe to present the petition. Councillor McCabe.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, please accept this petition. Save South Tyneside Hospital. No financing for downgrade of South Tyneside Hospital. And this petition has 1,005 online signatures. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe. In accordance with standing orders, I propose that the petition stands referred to the appropriate officer for further consideration. Is that seconded? Seconded. Is that agreed? Agreed. Petition 3 is from South Tyneside Tree Action Group, requesting that all trees are maintained and any road surfaces improved. Incorporate all current trees in St. Paul's Road, Jarrow. The petition has 19 signatories. In accordance with standing orders, I propose that the petition stands referred to appropriate officer for further consideration. Is that seconded? Is that agreed? Agreed. The next business is to receive motions under Procedure Rule 10. One motion has been received under this rule, submitted by Councillors Francis, Thompson, P. Milburn, Robertson and Hamilton. I will ask Councillor Francis to move the motion, and he may speak up to 5 minutes, and then I will ask whether the motion is seconded. The seconder may speak up to 3 minutes, or reserve the right to speak later in the date. The motion will then be open to debate by members, who may each ask for up to 3 minutes and may move the amendments. Councillor Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I urge you all to vote for this motion unamended here tonight. In October 2018, the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change warned that we only had 12 years to act to avoid global climate change catastrophe. That week, the story was buried somewhere in the middle of the Sunday papers. Since then, a huge movement has developed on a global level and that's thanks in part to the work of inspirational young people like Greta Thunberg. Young people who will have to live with the cost if we fail to act now. Greta and youth climate strikers have succeeded where previous generations, including mine, have failed. The implications of the IPCC reports are now front page news, and the eyes of the world are on people like us, decision makers. Decision makers who have a clear choice. We could choose to ignore overwhelming scientific evidence, to ignore the alarming warnings of the IPCC, and to ignore the desperate pleas of the younger generation. Or we could choose to listen and learn, to accept the expert advice, to step up to our responsibilities, and to do the right thing. We may be discussing this just down the road from the beach, but we simply can't afford to bury our heads in the sand. There is a huge task ahead of us all, and we can't do this alone, but we can and must take a lead on this. More and more people across our borough are taking steps to tackle climate change, from reducing the number of flights they take to cutting down on meat consumption, and I hope that we as a council are inspired by this. South Tyneside Council has already shown foresight and leadership when it comes to addressing the issues of climate breakdown. We can build on this foundation by taking a bold step forward today and making arguably one of the most important decisions this council has ever made. Local people will be watching us to see if we're all talk or whether we deliver on this commitment. The good news is that the changes we make will not only reduce the threat of climate catastrophe, but can also create a better life for all of us. As Councillor Simon Grover of St Albans District Council pointed out just last week, this is not about making sacrifices, it's about making choices. We can choose to have safer streets and cleaner air by switching to walking, cycling and zero-emission transport. We can choose to power our homes and businesses using cheap, locally sourced electricity. We can choose to insulate those homes and businesses, making them more comfortable to be in and cheaper to run, putting more money into local people's pockets, which is likely to be spent in the borough, thus boosting the local economy. And of course, we can plant trees, one of the best ways of increasing human happiness and reversing climate change. Research from the UN this month found that tree planting could remove 25% of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The targets and interim targets here are ambitious, but they reflect the urgency of our situation. As a coastal community, we should be especially conscious that watering down this motion could contribute to a sea level rise. Over 100 UK councils are ahead of us in declaring a climate emergency. Many of them have already started the process of looking at how to implement it. Let's learn from them and in true environmentally conscious fashion, recycle their best ideas, including community engagement and community scrutiny and accountability. In the words of Greta Thunberg, the bigger your carbon footprint, the bigger your moral duty. The bigger your platform, the bigger your responsibility. I want you to act as you would in a crisis. I want you to act as if our house is on fire, because it is. I urge every single one of you to do the right thing here tonight, to do the right thing for our children and grandchildren, to do the right thing for local communities, and to do the right thing for the future of this planet, because the clock is ticking and time is against us.
Seconded. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to second this motion proposed by the Green Party. And can I, whilst we're certainly not the first authority to declare a climate emergency, I hope we can in time be seen as a leader in how we respond to this emergency. I'm encouraged by the Council's promise of a comprehensive action plan being made available. In the not too distant future, I'm sure how we respond at this time will be seen as a pivotal point with the borough's stance on the environment. Thank you.
The motion is now open to debate. My members, however, I have had a notice of one amendment from Councillor Atkinson. The amendment has been circulated in writing, and I ask Councillor Atkinson to present her amendment. Councillor Atkinson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the amendment to the motion, as you say, is tabled and is with every member of the council, and I think it's in the public gallery as well. So we all agree, everyone in this room, that we have a climate change that's a real danger to us all. Global warming and rising temperatures are leading to wider changes to our weather here across the world. At the same time, increased carbon dioxide levels are causing the world's oceans to become more acidic. To limit the most damaging impacts of climate change, we need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions globally. We must all act to reduce the causes of climate change as rising sea levels, declining glaciers and sea ice, and the acidification of the oceans is happening now and will continue unless we act. The warning from the IPCC report of 2018 warns that we don't have long before the date of 2030 by which we need to restrict global temperature rises to 1.5 degrees Celsius from their pre-industrial levels. Currently, at 1 degree Celsius, only a further 0.5 degrees Celsius increase will further exacerbate weather events such as flooding and extremes of temperature which affect the most vulnerable and cause damage to natural habitats. So as has been noted there, South Tyneside Council takes the effects of climate change seriously and has already embedded many renewable solutions and efficiency measures to reduce the amount of carbon being emitted. However, we need to do more. If this amendment that is tabled is agreed, the pledge we will be making will be that we will be a carbon neutral council by 2030. How we will achieve it needs to be smart. That is, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant and time-bound. This amendment uses the smart approach which is needed to strengthen the motion and is formed by listening to advice from experts, this to understand the many complexities around this declaration. This amendment to the motion will ensure we will further boost our actions and embed our carbon neutral goal across our operations. We will lead by example, working with partners and our communities on our journey to a carbon neutral South Tyneside. This amendment also calls upon the government to pass the necessary legislation.
You have 30 seconds left.
Thank you. This amendment also calls on the government to pass the necessary legislation and provide the powers and resources necessary to deliver our climate change goals here in South Tyneside and beyond. I move the amendment to the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, I second the amendment, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, are we going to tolerate that from the gallery?
Come on, order, public gallery, please. Thank you, Councillor Martin.
Mr. Mayor, it's undeniable that climate change is already the greatest challenge of our age, something that is recognised around the world and across the political spectrum. The landmark IPCC report which we've heard on the climate crisis stated that we have just over a decade to radically change how we organise our societies and economies. The effects of climate change can be seen in the UK around the world. UK temperatures have already risen. Globally, extreme weather is predicted to become more common and have a negative impact on all forms of life on the planet. Ed Miliband, the former leader of the Labour Party, has recently stated, disaster avoidance in the coming decades is a moral obligation of the highest order. How we respond to the climate change crisis is up to us. We must show leadership in the community that we represent. That is why local government, the local state, needs to be front and centre in the fight against climate change. Councils up and down the country have been taking the lead by declaring a climate emergency and committing to reduce emissions. This amendment, which I am pleased to second tonight, underlines our absolute commitment to tackling climate change and making it a key focus of this council. Every area of council policy will take into account the responsibilities we have to reduce carbon emissions in line with our 2030 target. The amendment offers a reality-based approach to the problems of climate change and sets our goals. But let's not forget that this Labour administration has already had a proud record of commitment to protecting the environment and reducing the council's carbon footprint, and that's been recognised by the mover of the original motion. As I said in my budget speech in February, We have invested in PV and wind projects, utilising the contaminated land in the Biking Business Park between Groundwork and Tedco to generate a renewable energy supply, which is £1.54 million. The Viking Energy Network Jarrow to take low-grade heat from the River Tyne and to convert it using new heat pump technologies to provide renewable heat supply to buildings in the vicinity, £7 million. Future projects include LED street lighting replacements, £1 million, that's in 1920. The Middlefields storage battery, a method of storing electricity generated by PV and wind at Middlefields which cannot be used immediately, £800,000, that's in 1920. And then in my own ward of Simonshire and Recondite, there's a housing development, Sinclair Meadows, which is carbon neutral. But if we are really to make a difference, there needs to be a fundamental change in government legislation, and we need the financial resources from London to help us realise and achieve our action plan regarding climate change. That is why we will continue to lobby government. Mr. Ware, we should be unwavering in our diligence and our commitment to pragmatic steps for the borough to lead in the fight against climate change. This Labour administration will ensure that we continue to show leadership in all efforts to ensure a clean, green future for the borough and to work to combat climate change. I second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Can we have order in the public gallery, please? Councillor Francis, do you want to reply to the debate on the amendment?
No, it doesn't.
Sorry, does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor McHale?
Huh? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I must admit that I'm a novice when it comes to this subject. I've spent some time trying to find out some facts and figures because I always have an open mind about things. Just one fact that absolutely I was gobsmacked at was that sulphur hexafluoride is 22,000 times more heat trapping than CO2. Yet we all have mobile phones, we all have computers, you know. Some of the terminology that they use, global warming potential, it's very, very complicated. But we all have a responsibility, and I'm conscious of the words that Jesus Christ used once. Him without sin, let him cast the first stone. So if I look around here and look at people, do you all have solar panels? Do you all have a car? There are, and there is a way of conducting business, please.
Not like this.
Listen, members of the public, listen, I don't want to clear the public gallery, so I would ask for calm and quietness. We're going to adjourn the meeting, so please keep your comments down.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, members of the public as well. You may not like the view I've got, but I would like you to listen to it, because that's how we come to a policy, how you become strategic, is you listen to other views. There may be something in my view that you may listen to and think, yes, that's right. So I'll come back to Jesus Christ, and he said, him without sin, let him cast the first stone. And what he meant by that was, you know, have you looked at yourself? Because, as David Francis has quite rightly said, it's not party policy. He's already given praise to the council of some of the things that we've done, and we have done quite a lot. At the end of the day, we can do better, but we need everybody, and I mean everybody, to come on board. But there's three things that we need to do if you're going to achieve an aim. It's got to be realistic. So are we going to actually stop using our cars? Are we going to actually stop you know, many of the things that we like to do, like eating roast beef on a Sunday? You know, let's get practical. So the aims are realistic, they've got to be achievable, and there is a cost to achieving what we need to achieve. Where's that cost going to come from? This council has already been heavily reduced, third hardest hit authority in the country. We've lost 44% of our income in the last 6 years. So let's get real. I listen to what the lead member of resources has said, and I welcome his plan. I also welcome what Councillor Atkinson has said. There's one thing I'd like to finish off with. It's just a statistic actually, but the population is increasing. What control have we over that? 1.3 people China, 1.5 billion India. We have no control over that. This is what I'm talking about with your aims. They've got to be achievable, got to be realistic. And also an interesting fact.
Can we have silence in the public gallery, please? Can you please be quiet?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for that. People who don't listen never learn. In 1991, there was an explosion of particles from Mount Pintabo in the Philippines. And volcanoes are very, very important. They've been around for hundreds of millions of years. And what Mount Pintabo did between 1991 and 1993, it actually reduced global warming by 1 degree Fahrenheit. You know, I think we need a structured look at this, and Councillor Malcolm and Councillor Atkinson and Councillor Malcolm, leader of the council, we need to have expert opinion, because there are differing views of how you actually achieve what you want to achieve. And with that, I'd also like to ask colleagues if they can support the amendment to the motion, because I think it's achievable, it's realistic, it's measurable. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, colleagues, friends, on the 1st of May, Jeremy Corbyn not only made history but made a speech that will hopefully change the future of the world. He rose to his feet in Parliament and he said, today this House must declare an environment and climate emergency. We have no time to waste. We are talking about nothing less than the irreversible destruction of the environment within our lifetimes. In his speech, he praised the work of Vic Miliband, his predecessor as leader of our great party, and of Rebecca Bailey for her work on the Green Industrial Revolution. He even recognised the work of the Environment Secretary, Michael Gove. This may have been a surprise to some, but it really shouldn't be, because this issue is far more important than party politics. This is the most important issue of a generation. It is a duty to our children, our grandchildren, and every child that is yet to be born. A duty to preserve this planet for future generations. Which is why when I was asked to support this motion, I did so with hesitation, because now is the time to act. We must seize the opportunity before it is too late to right the damage that humanity has been causing for generations. Declaring a climate emergency isn't a goal, it isn't an outcome, and it isn't a solution, but it is a start. Declaring a climate emergency will give us direction, and I'm sure that on this issue we can all agree. Now is the time to start on a path that means each and every one of us can make a real difference. There are currently 799 jurisdictions in 17 countries covering 141 million citizens who have already declared a climate emergency, including 218 towns, boroughs, cities and parish councils in the UK. But on the 1st of May, when Jeremy Corbyn spoke in Parliament, history was made. Because on that day, when the House of Commons voted unanimously to declare a climate emergency, the UK became the first country in the world where a bipartisan parliament declared a climate emergency and agreed to work together across all parties to implement climate change. And today, it's our turn. Our turn to listen to the children like my grandchildren who are scared for the future of their planet. Time to put aside our political differences and become the 800th jurisdiction in the world to declare a climate emergency. Please support this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we support the motion put forward by Councillor Atkinson tonight, which sets out a clear and measured climate measure at the South
plays a key role in addressing the issues associated with climate change and promotes South Tyneside as a borough of sustainability. Mr Mayor, speaking as a councillor but also as a resident of South Tyneside of an age that's most likely going to inherit the issues and legacy of national government and their snail-paced attempt to address these issues, I'm proud that the recommendation that I'm speaking in favour of tonight will put South Tyneside at the forefront of meeting these challenges head-on. We may only be a small borough, but by doing our bit and joining the many other local authorities in addressing issues associated with climate change, will make a significant impact. Already in South Tyneside, we've taken steps, all achievements that we should be proud of, but by taking this further and setting out a clear strategy, by committing further, we are committing further to ensure the residents of our borough and the next generation, my generation, and those yet to come, can enjoy the beaches, the streets and the environment that we all love. Mr Mayor, I encourage colleagues in the Chamber to support the amendment and we must act today.
Councillor Francis, do you wish to reply on the debate of the amendment?
Yes, please, Mr Mayor. So we've heard a number of things said over the last few minutes. We've heard that we must act, that we don't have long, that South Tyneside Council takes responsibility, and we've heard that we need to do more because there's just over a decade to act. But we've also heard that it's necessary to take a reality-based approach, and the reality is this is an emergency. The clue's in the name. In terms of talking about specific and measurable and achievable, realistic time-bound targets, I'm reminded of the rhetorical question, do you value what you measure or do you measure what you value? The interim targets that were written into the original motion basically provide much more regular checks.
Point of information, Mr Mayor. Point of information. I don't know who's got the mic switched on. It only works if there's 3 mics. Thank you. Just as a point of information to Councillor Francis, one of the research things I was looking at was from the United Nations in 1987, where the report said they had 10 years. So, you know, there is a difference in the scientific world, difference of opinion. Thank you.
Okay, so, I mean, we also heard that there were concerns over cost, but as I mentioned in my original speech earlier on tonight, sometimes the things that we might do to address climate change can actually help put more money into people's pockets. If you look at the passive house building standards, for example, it makes heating your home much more affordable. It's not just about creating fewer emissions, it's also about putting money into people's pockets that's spent in the local economy. And obviously, we also heard that we've got to contend with what happens at a national government level, and that's undeniably true. I'm no fan of the Conservative government, let me assure you of that. But all of the councils in the UK are under that same government and have to deal with those same obstacles they're put in their place. Some of them have risen to the challenge more admirably than maybe others have. But just to, again, just to reiterate the words of Greta Thunberg, she says, the bigger your platform, the bigger your responsibility. She wants us to act as if we're in a crisis, because we are.
Mr Mayor,
yes.
Move a name vote. This is for the amendment, Mr Mayor.
Yes.
For the amendment.
Yes.
So just to remind members, you're voting for the amendment to the motion. This isn't the substantive motion. Right. Those for the amendment: Councillor Amar.
Yes.
Anglin.
Yes.
Atkinson.
Four.
Bell.
Four.
Boyack. Brady. Carter. Dean. Not present. Dick. Dix.
4.
Dixon.
4.
Donaldson.
4.
Duncan. Ellison.
4.
Flynn.
4.
Foreman.
4.
Francis.
Reluctantly for, it's better than nothing.
Gibson.
4.
Hamilton.
4.
Hay.
4.
Hetherington.
4.
Hobson. Not here. Keegan.
4.
Kerr.
4.
Kilgar.
4.
Leask.
4.
Malcolm E.
4.
Malcolm I.
4.
Maxwell N.
4.
Maxwell N.E.
4.
McCabe.
4.
Matthew. Milburn J.
4.
Milburn P.
Yes. 4.
Peacock.
4.
Perry.
4.
Porthouse.
4.
Proudlock.
4.
Puncheon.
4.
Purvis.
4.
Roberts.
4.
Robertson. Sewell.
4.
Smith A.
4.
Smith N.
4.
Stevenson.
4.
Strike. Okay. Taylor.
4.
Thompson.
4.
Trainer.
4.
Walsh A.
4.
Walsh M.
4.
Welsh.
4.
West.
4.
I can say that to you now.
It's unanimous. The amendment is agreed. The motion is carried. That concludes the business for today's meeting. Thank you for your attention.